So this week we're going to be talking about middle adulthood. We talked quite a bit about young adulthood last time, all of the stressors that they're in, and now we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the plateau or coming to an established place in life and kind of shifting, looking at the purpose of life and what we want it to be. Okay, so first of all, who are adults? Who are middle adults? So some of that has to do with the fact that um, life expectancy has changed dramatically in the last 100 years. So what adult is and how long that lasts has changed dramatically, even until 2003, and we are living longer in most communities. Because people are living longer, we also have more people who are older in the population. So this is most apparent in industrialized countries, but it's true across the world. Not only are people living longer, but they're living healthier for longer. So that's another aspect of that. So people are more involved socially and more and may be working longer, working second and third kind of careers. So there's a longer kind of social life for folks who are in their older years of life. And so as we talked about a little bit last week, I also wanted to bring up here for middle adulthood, we talk about age in a lot of different ways. Again, when we're talking about adults, the how old are you question changes a little bit because a 47-year-old who has lived a really hard life, done a lot of physical labor, not had healthy habits, smoking, drinking, not sleeping enough, that person is going to have a really different life day to day, perhaps different psychological life as well, than someone who's the same chronological age, same number of years on the planet, but different kind of life up until that point, right? So here are some stats for me. The biological age and psychological age are based on things that I could find online. They're not super technical tests, but fun to play with. So my chronological age is 41. I am healthy, haven't had kids, don't drink, work out quite regularly, and pretty good BMI. That's a crappy way of figuring out if someone's healthy, we know. But if we're taking that into account, so my biological age by most measures is lower than 41. Psychological age depends on how you measure this. Some people talk about social adeptness and social roles in psychological age as well. Other people look at this in terms of coping skills and how well you can handle life. So that's something trying to get at wisdom. I kind of liked one test that said 47 for me, gave me another 6 years. Social age we see based on social roles. So given that I am not married and don't have kids, I have very different social roles than a lot of people do at 41. Whether that would map onto age is a little bit hard to figure out, but you can see what we're talking about there. Again, as I started talking about with younger adults last week, that your social age has to do a little bit more with how you are inhabiting the world, what social roles, what kinds of relationships are primary in your life. The other thing that I want you to notice about this is that a lot of these are culturally specific, and that your biological age may be culturally specific, your psychological age and your social age are definitely culturally specific. So what does it mean to deal effectively with your environment? What do we expect from somebody socially? Okay, so looking at middle adulthood, Historically, we have ignored it. There's not been a whole lot of concern for this age group because we were not concerned about are the kids all right, and we were not concerned about end of life kind of problems. So we generally thought that personality and other kinds of things were stable. And this was seen as a plateau after all those changes in young adulthood. As the baby boomers got to this age, we started seeing more research into what happens in middle adulthood. And there's a lot going on. It's not just a plateau. So when is middle adulthood? This is somewhere between 40 and 40 to 45 at the low range and 60 to 65 at the high range. However, a lot of people who are in their 70s and older consider themselves in midlife. Erikson talked about midlife as consisting of the crisis of generativity versus stagnation. So generativity is the idea of giving back. I have become established in my career, in my life, in my social networks, and I'm going to provide others with the benefits from what I have earned. And the idea here is that it's not exclusively giving back to your kids, because in young adulthood, we are about establishing our nuclear family and about establishing our connections with our family. This is a little bit beyond that. This is what is the lasting impression I'm going to make on the world, right? What is my legacy going to be, kind of thing. People who have experienced more authoritative parenting as children and young adults are more likely to have greater generativity. Folks who have greater generativity are more likely to have more involvement in their children's schooling. Generativity is also related to pro-social behavior. It's giving back. So this is not a huge surprise that it's related to pro-social or kind of altruistic behavior. Okay, another thing about middle adulthood is that we have this naive theory, this thing that we tell ourselves in our culture about middle adulthood as a time of crisis. I should note that that is not universally a way that middle adulthood is characterized across cultures. So there's that, first of all. But also to note that there's conflicting views on this. So the idea was that you have a midlife crisis, you get to a level of material success. I've achieved this status, I've gotten to the peak, I've gotten to this plateau again. And I still want more, or I'm not completely satisfied, right? I have achieved the thing and I still am not as happy as I thought I might be. So early psychoanalysts thought about this in terms of three different kind of responses that one could have to that. One is denial. So it's not what I thought it was going to be, whatever, I'm just going to keep going. Starting all over, I reject everything that has gone before, and now I'm going to go in this whole new direction. And integrating, which is the healthiest of these three, your old life and some new insights that you have based on having worked so hard to get to a pinnacle and then decided that that's not necessarily all that you want to be fulfilled. So a lot of popular culture has talked about this related to status and concern about the meaning of life, but we don't see in research a lot of support for the idea of a midlife crisis. Despite the reputation of there being such thing as a midlife crisis, most people feel pretty good. This is a time of generally positive moods, fewer psychological issues than other times in life. And folks in middle adulthood report feeling 10 years younger than they actually are. So there's not a whole lot of support for the idea that it's normative that everybody goes through this crisis. That's not to say that some people won't, right? Some people will go through a midlife crisis, but it's not universal. It's not an everybody does this kind of thing. And it can look like a reconsidering and reintegrating of new ideas into your current trajectory, as opposed to denial, I'm just going to keep going, or I'm starting completely over with a whole new direction in life. According to Jung, this is when people start to consider the darker parts of themselves, the parts of themselves that they're not so proud of. Jung saw this as a necessary part of to reaching actually being self-actualized, but it's not easy. Jung also mentions that introverts may do better at this kind of introspection that's required to successfully navigate a reassessment of what is life about and what's important to me in midlife. Okay, so we're going to stop here, and then we'll come back and talk about some changes and roles that we see in middle adulthood in our next video.